A Plaguelands Media production.
Hey everyone, Hugh from Plaguelands Media here, and today I want to talk to you about possibly one of the best new modern horror novels that I have read in a really, really long time. It's kind of difficult these days to, well, not necessarily to find good new modern horror, but to read a horror novel and not compare it to the nostalgic horror novels of the past, books that I read growing up, books by Sean Hudson, James Herbert, Stephen King, of course, Richard Lehman. But every so often, you kind of come across a book that a lot of people have been raving about. You wonder whether or not you should invest your time in it. And that's what I kind of felt with the book I want to talk to you about today. And that book is The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. He is a Native American professor of English at the University of Boulder, Colorado. A lot of people praised this book when it came out, and I did buy it, but it sat on my shelf for a long time. I finally got around to reading it, and I am so glad that I did. So, you know, without any more bullshit on my end, here is another episode of So if you haven't already guessed the title, The Only Good Indians, you can pretty much extrapolate from that. The only good Indians are dead Indians is what it's kind of implying. And the novel centers around four friends. I wrote their names down. Ricky, Lewis, Gabe, and Cass, I should say. They are Blackfeet Indians, I believe I might have gotten that wrong. I apologize if I did. Who kind of grew up together on the reservation, best of friends. And when they're kind of in their late teens, early kind of adulthood, they go hunting and there is an incident. And that incident comes back to haunt the four of them a decade later. The book opens with a death. There are some elements of the supernatural in that death, but sort of, but not really. And then the story follows Lewis, who basically instigated the event that led to this happening a decade later. And the Lewis story, he has left the reservation. He's married to a white woman. They are trying for a child. He works at the post office as a delivery man. There is one other Native American person who works there with him. And kind of his story starts to bring out the elements of the supernatural that are kind of woven into The Only Good Indians. And when his story culminates rather tragically, it then follows Gabe and Cass and their story on the reservation, and one of their daughters, who is an up-and-coming basketball star. Now, I really can't talk a lot about this book without spoiling it, and I really don't want to spoil this book. Needless to say that Stephen Graham Jones, who is himself Native American, weaves a lot of not only Native American culture, Native American mythology and beliefs, but also life on and off the reservation, how different it is, how difficult it is. He has an amazing way of connecting things. One of the hardest things, I was actually thinking about this morning, one of the hardest things about horror novels is the pacing. It's the same with a horror film. How often have you watched a horror film where the pacing is either too fast or too slow? It's the same with horror literature. The pacing in this book is absolutely perfect. It's a slow burn in the beginning that speeds up, and then after the tragedy of the Lewis story, when the reader knows, okay, this is what's going on, the tension that you feel reading this, when you read Gabe and Cass's story, and Denora as well, the daughter's story, it's a palpable tension. Like, you are reading this and you are really feeling tense and nervous, and how is it going to play out, and how are they going to get through it. One thing as well about horror literature is the gore factor. Now, if you think back, if you've ever read any of the horror rock and roll writers of the 80s, especially the British ones like James Herbert, Sean Hudson, they describe the gore. There are some Sean Hudson novels that would make you want to vomit. Stephen King does it to a lesser extent. Stephen King, I believe, is a more tense kind of build-up. Dean Koontz, the poor man Stephen King, as a lot of people say, but I quite like his work, does this as well. Stephen Graham Jones, not so much. When you need gore, there's gore. When you don't need the gore, there isn't gore. You can imagine much, much worse. And I like that. I really, really did enjoy that about his novel. I was led to believe that this was his first novel. That is far from the truth. He has written quite extensively a large list of short stories and novels. I do have his next novels here. My Heart is a Chainsaw, which I am looking forward to reading. I haven't had a chance to read this yet. But really, this is an author that I'm going to look up. I'm really interested in a lot of his earlier work. I cannot recommend this book enough. If you're looking for a great horror novel, The Only Good Indians is an absolutely fantastic story. It's really quite heartfelt as well. You do feel for the characters. Initially, when the premise was set up, which happens maybe about a fifth of the way into the book, when you find out exactly what the tragedy was that compelled these four friends 10 years ago, what actually happened. When you read it, your initial response is going to be stupid. And the only reason that is going to be your initial response is because, well, at least for me, I honestly don't quite understand Native American culture. It's not something I'm well versed in. It's not something I've read extensively about. I'm familiar with it on probably the most basic of levels. And yet, what Stephen Graham Jones manages to do is not only get you invested in the main characters of this story and the mistake that they made and how it comes back to haunt them, but it gets you invested in the why. Like, you understand, I guess, the villain of the story, which is incredibly important in a horror novel, because you don't just want the reader to be going, oh, okay, that's the bad guy and they're trying to kill the good guys and I get why, boo, bad guy, yay, good guys. You don't want that. You don't want that in a horror movie. Look at all the great horror movie series. And I'm going to just throw out to you what I throw out to my film studies class every semester about the Friday the 13th film series. Jason Voorhees, if we're talking about the very first Friday the 13th film, of course, Jason's mother. That's a spoiler, but if you haven't watched it, you shouldn't be fucking watching this video. Those movies are as much about the villain's story as they are about the heroes. Jason Voorhees, in the first film, he jumps out of the water at the end, whatever. But in the second film, there's the connection with, it's not even set at Camp Crystal Lake, I don't think. I can't even remember now. But anyway, the lake itself is a character, but Jason Voorhees is a character as well. He watched his mother get butchered on the beach. He kept her head in the cave. In the third film, you have the character who had a relationship previously with Jason Voorhees that a lot of people gloss over. It's not just about the sexy teens getting killed at the camp. The camp isn't even a factor in most of these films. We always get Camp Crystal Lake because of the first Friday the 13th movie, but really, Crystal Lake is the setting. It's not Camp Crystal Lake, it's Crystal Lake. They're set in holiday houses and things like that, but you get Jason as, I'm not going to say he's a tragic hero, but I'm saying you understand the circumstances that brought him to do what he does. And let's be fair, if we're talking about the Friday the 13th films, those sexy teens fucking deserved it in most of them. Let's be honest with you. Premarital sex, doing drugs, naughty, 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 naughty. Anyway, that's enough. But what I'm saying is, a good horror film, a good horror series, the villain is as much a part of the story as the heroes, the heroine, the scream queen, the final girl, whatever you want to call it. That is perfectly captured in this book, The Only Good Indians, where you actually give a shit about the motives of whatever is doing whatever is happening. Okay. Now, Entertainment Weekly on the back here, one of 2020's buzziest horror novels. There are no B's in this book, so that's a flat out lie. It is a fucking great book, though. Highly recommend it. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. I've been uploading too much, and I have to get ready for tonight's Call of Cthulhu game. Wait. Oh, you're up here. Call of Cthulhu. Although if I turn the camera around and pull it down a bit, Call of Cthulhu. Okay, that's enough for me. So, if you like this video, I know it's not a final girl video, so only like 4 people are going to fucking watch it. Hey, whatever. Give me a like, give me a comment, subscribe, follow us. Go and check my cell phone because I apparently just got a message. But most of all, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.